Okay.
Welcome, everyone. And you know me, Scott always does the nice introduction, but I'm going to let you have it. So, and shamelessly plug your book, feel free. So,
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is David Fawcett. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Programming here at CE Integrity. And I do this webinar every week with Scott and sometimes with pleasure with Tammy. And I also do a Chem Sex support group at the same time, same place on Tuesday evenings, just so you know. And if you don't know me, I'm the author of Men and Meth, which is really hard to focus with this blurry background. Men and Meth is a book about amphetamine use and sex, like a combination drug and sexual behavior among gay men. But about 80% of the book was relevant to everybody, although all the case studies were gay men. So I spent the last year or so creating a new book, which the draft is nearly done. I'm really excited to say, so fairly be out hopefully in the winter about co-occurring drug use and sexual behavior with everybody, and all men, women, gay, straight, all kinds of drugs. And the working title right now is Chasing Intensity.
ooh, that's a good title.
Co-occurring drug use and sexual behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I'm so excited about that because it's always been applicable, but the focus of the book, was more narrow. So using your expertise to share. I often talk to people, like today I talked to multiple where, someone has some chemical use that they perceive as not problematic, but, obviously is part of the whole overall problematic picture. So I think it'll be a really valuable book to have that. So
great, good. So anyway, that's exciting, new. I'll keep this group posted as it moves forward. I always start out with a few minutes just about a topic, and the obvious topic tonight, given the holiday tomorrow, is gratitude. And I think Scott and I almost always talk about gratitude anyway. Every week it comes up in one way or another. We can kind of weave it into any topic and any applicable topic. But today, gratitude itself is the star of the show. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about a few things of just thoughts I had about gratitude. First of all, just the mood changing effects of gratitude. I think when we are, well, I'll speak for myself, when I am in a bad place, feeling really down and negative, and somebody suggests, why don't you make a gratitude list? But the first thing I want to do is kind of roll my eyes and just think, oh my God, a gratitude list is the last thing I want to do right now. I want to maybe be in my victimhood or revel in my anger or resentment or whatever's going on with me, which isn't very often, but it does happen. And so, but I know if I can just sit down and do a gratitude list, literally, it's like some kind of antitoxin for me. And I'm not talking a major writing event. I'm talking, 5 minutes sitting down and putting together a list of 5 things I'm grateful for, 10 things. It literally is a mood changer, and it can really reverse a lot of the negativity in my life. And just what it does, I think any addict have what's called a negativity bias, right? We start to notice all the things that are wrong in our lives, all the people who weren't good to us, and how life has dealt us bad cards and all that stuff. And gratitude just really helps us balance out our viewpoint, so it's not all the negative, but at least, even if and nobody's life is perfect, there is negative stuff in our lives, but this helps balance. There's also positive stuff in our lives, but I think just the addictive mindset is prone to just ignoring that. And so I really do use it as a tool. And when I most don't want to sit down and do it, I know is when I really need to do it. And I also often challenge with my clients. I do a 30-day gratitude challenge. And it's really just literally sitting down and making a gratitude list every day for 30 days. And it doesn't have to be a major event. Like I said, it could be 5 things, it could be 10 things. But the habit of doing that, 30 days is enough to kind of create a new habit, new neural pathways. And it really is an amazing thing. And I invite you to do it because it really does add some positivity and some grace to our lives. So that's one of the things that this is really good for, is the mood changing events. So I try to, one of the ways I do is list my blessings every day. And that's kind of a normal gratitude thing. But there's been some really interesting research that, the human brain, especially the addictive brain, likes novelty, and we get kind of bored with the same old routines. And so I thought this was such a great suggestion. They said, make a 5 list of things every day, but every day focus on a different area of your life. So maybe today I'm going to focus on 5 things I like about my job, or maybe it could be 5 things I like about my family, or 5 things I'm grateful for in terms of my health or my recreational, my talents or my skills or anything, but just keep it focused, topically focused. And it really does kind of make it more interesting. And actually, the research showed there's more benefit if we can keep it pretty focused in areas as opposed to just listing every day. I'm grateful for this, the same thing over and over again. That gets kind of stale. And so I really love that, just really being able to focus on a specific topical area. Plus, it's like a little meditation on that topic. Okay, let me think about, that specific area of my life and what I like about it. Gratitude helps us really slow down and appreciate the moment. I think that's another thing. We get kind of wild in our thoughts, racing thoughts, ideas. We get spread too thin. We have too many things going, and that's a real risk at this time of the year too. Everything speeds up, it seems, and so gratitude really helps us focus. And I think this is all about slowing down and focusing on what is in our lives, what's positive about our lives, and what we can do. So I think it's a great tool in just kind of slowing us down and providing a focus, much in the same way that for meditators or for even mindfulness, you can use your breath as kind of an anchor to follow, to anchor yourself down and just focus on that. In many ways, I think if we can focus on gratitude, it kind of wraps us in this positive light that feels good, and we deserve to feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. Another aspect, I think, of gratitude, one that's particularly pertinent this year, reminded me, was really focusing on what lessons come out of hard times, and I think we all have had this, experience of the pandemic this past year and a half, and everybody I know has lost somebody or somebody got very sick, and certainly we lost a sense of normalcy and I think emotional safety and just routine. And so it is a hard thing. It's not over yet. It's going on. It's a hard experience. But out of that came some opportunities for gratitude for me. One is I'm grateful that I can live in the same house with my partner for 18 months with very little other human contact, and we kind of enjoyed it. We liked it. And so that was grateful. It kind of put every relationship to the test, I think, but also learning that I can adapt. We're very creative as human beings. We can adapt. I was grateful for how fast people kind of adapted, and I could do what I wanted to do in terms of my job and helping people and serving, but also just the gratitude of having people out there. I really came to cherish human connection in a way that I think I took for granted before. And so that ability to just really be grateful for the people in my life that I can reach out to or call, or the people I couldn't see, just really has been astounding. We were on a company in a team meeting this morning, and people, Tammy and Karen, our clinical manager, were talking about grandma hugs coming up, and this Christmas I'm going to have grandpa hugs. I have two grandkids I haven't seen, so that were born in the last 2 years. So those are wonderful moments, and I'm grateful to be able to reconnect with people too. So that's been terrific. Appreciate special talents. I think we all have gifts and talents and skills that we either sometimes undervalue or don't really polish. And I think the ability to connect with people, the ability to comfort people, the ability to reach out and just have that gift of conversation, so you can maybe connect with somebody who's pretty withdrawn and closed. Those kinds of things. I think it's really important for us all to look at what do we do best and what do we do well, and really use it, because God knows the world needs all of those things right now to carry on. And then just two more. Savor your positive memories, right? I think I'm grateful for memories of this past year of my life. I'm at that age, I guess, where as a therapist, I was trained that as we get older, we're more easily prone to kind of life review, right? We look back over our lives, and sometimes with regret, but hopefully more often with pleasure and gratitude that the people that have come across our path and the joys we've had and the blessings we've had and the places we've gone and all that. So I think it's that time of year too, to kind of reflect on all the good stuff in our lives. And again, it's not this kind of Pollyanna, just I'm going to ignore all the bad stuff. It's a balance. It's acknowledging the good and recognizing that it's not all perfect, but we really need, I think, to anchor on that good stuff in order to really get through the day sometimes. And then finally, I think just again, because of the losses I think people had and the pandemic, I think it's just really as a way of gratitude to really honor the special people in our lives, and they may be here, they may be not. I lost a mentor of mine, an important mentor of mine this past year. I think we have all had those kinds of things. And so I'm honoring the people I've lost, but I'm also honoring the people that are still here and that I can still see. So just really looking, kind of scanning across. And in this era, I think it's so easy to have, our 5,000 Facebook friends and these kind of superficial connections. But there are some people that really are critical in our lives and important and stable and helpful and loving and unconditional and all those things. And I think just really think about that and honor those and be grateful for those. So those are just some ideas about gratitude on my part tonight. I'm going to throw it open and invite you to share about gratitude or about anything. This is a topic about addiction, which is about as broad as you can get. And so we welcome all your comments, and I'm always excited to have Tammy with me. I'm grateful for that tonight because we always have fun doing this. So
we do. And I'm grateful that you didn't have one on patience, because that seems to be the normal topic that hits me when
that was the last thing on my list, Tammy.
I know. Thank you. Yeah. But I do the gratitude list, and I do find that to be super helpful. I have not done one in a category before. I love that idea of like focusing on one area of like, health or relationships or family or work or whatever.
Right.
And I think that that's a really good idea, because it really gets to be easy of like, I'm grateful for the same 3 things or same 5 things every day. And then it's so rote that it is less meaningful. I do find for myself too that it slows me down, because if I'm in a tizzy, shall we say, and like I need to be grateful. It just taking the moment to shift to be intentional, it starts to slow things down. It starts to shift things, and that's really helpful for me. I think a lot of it is to the reframing, because like you're talking about, I haven't met these grandchildren. Well, it'd be really easy to focus on, how horrible this has been because I've never gotten to, and instead you're focusing on, I'm going to get to see them, and that is, yes, I love to travel, and I used to travel, and then, then I didn't. And, I found myself during the last year and a half going, I'll never get to travel and all of this. And I went, wait, I need to be grateful. I have had the ability, I lived in a small town in West Michigan. The fact that I have had the ability to travel vastly in the world is atypical of people that came from that area. So as soon as I shifted it, then I was thinking about all these great memories, people I've met, and all these positive things, which was very different from the, I'm never going to get to travel again, which, that always is a problem for me if I'm, going down it. So reframing, it's the same situation, but I was just looking at it from a different lens, the lens of gratitude. And that was really meaningful. So that was helpful. And I think so much the lessons, I learn, unfortunately, lessons best, when things are difficult, when things are sailing along, I'm just kind of clipping along. So I really have to lean into the tools that I've learned if I am struggling with something, and, then I have to be more intentional. I use that word again, because it's really easy for me to click through the day and, and not be mindful of things. So as soon as I start being intentional, I've one, I'll share quickly too, like one of the things I chose to do for myself during COVID was reaching out, like you talked about, mentors. And I reached out to the person that was the person that talked to my parents. I was young when I got into recovery, and he was like the only person in town that they knew of. And he said, get her off to treatment, whatever. So I wrote him a handwritten note, and sent it, and he wrote me back, and I've got that note saved, but I was like, I'm going to be intentional. Like I've not, I haven't seen him in decades, but, I'm so grateful for him. And I was intentional about, there were people that I was like, I'm thinking of them, I'm going to reach out, and I did it. So, and then I had gratitude. I was like, so grateful for them, but also grateful that I took the time, I had time, to do those things. So, yeah, I mean, gratitude is I 100% agree, because if I'm in gratitude, I can't be doing poor me or whatever.
Right.
Even if nothing's changed other than my lens of how I'm looking at things.
It's the whole, you're absolutely right. It's all about reframing. And as you were talking, I realized it is, and you helped me clarify this just now, it's very grounding, right? Because when I'm in the swirl of my busyness, I'm kind of floating above everything. I'm disconnected. And gratitude really helps me focus on specifics, and it brings me back down, and I feel connected and grounded again. And
Yes.
with focus and clarity, it really does help in many more ways than just making a list.
Right.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, I haven't seen research, but I would have to believe that my body slows down, my breathing slows. I bet there's a physical change,
Oh, I'm sure
as I
too.
settle into that gratitude versus, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the first question, and let me know, so there's 3 of them right now. If you can't see the first one, I'll put it into answered. So but it says, I'm a single male, and I think it would be best for my recovery of exhibitionism to quit porn. My issue is coming up with solutions to when I want to masturbate, because my go-to has always been porn. How can I get out of this vicious circle?
Okay, so there's a lot of compulsive activity there, and porn and exhibitionism are kind of 2 different things, right? Porn is that compulsive use, obviously, of a thing that really is usually typically a response to a feeling, usually an urge, and it feels like a sexual urge, but with addiction, and porn addiction included, a lot of our other feelings like sadness or fear or boredom or anger or resentment or loneliness or all that stuff, everything over time gets kind of channeled, so it converts into a feeling horny, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd encourage you, when you have the urge to use porn, to, like, first of all, and you can't do it by yourself, but I would get into some recovery groups if you're not already, but really try to start to look at what's really going on. What am I feeling? Just ask yourself. And it's not going to be obvious at first. You're going to have to kind of dig around, but it may be lonely. It may be just a habit. A lot of guys look at porn before they go to sleep just to relax or whatever. But it's not really about being horny or sexually aroused. It's about trying to numb some feeling or disconnect from some feeling. So that's the porn piece. The exhibitionism is something I really think you should probably talk to somebody about, because that's a more serious issue. I mean, the porn is certainly a serious issue too, but exhibitionism is in a different category that I think requires some professional assistance there, because that really is often about the need to expose yourself in order to get a reaction, right? To shock somebody, to make them surprised. And so that gets into the realm of offending. That's actually offending behavior. It's illegal, and it's something that could get you in a lot of trouble. And so again, the urge there can be a similar kind of feeling or emotional urge that triggers that. But that urge is something I think I would really be careful of. So what you're describing is being caught in this cycle as you talk. And a lot of the words we hear for people in these cycles are feeling trapped, right? Feeling trapped, and they can't get out. They can't break that cycle. And I would say that you probably can't do it by yourself. But I would really recommend getting to SAA or SCLA or some sex addiction anonymous support group. And I'd also, and probably that's not going to be adequate, I think, to address some of the exhibitionism issues. I really think probably a CSAT is going to be most helpful there. As I say, because that's really risky, because you could end up on a sex offender list for the rest of your life. And you don't want that, obviously. So be cautious about that. That's a very dangerous behavior, although people kind of minimize it somehow, but it's very risky for you, and it's very damaging for other people. Some people can just, it's not a big deal, but other people, and if you were to flash at a kid or somebody who's underage, you're in bigger trouble. So I'd really encourage you to get professional assistance for that.
So I'm going to chime in on what CSAT is. It's Certified Sex Addiction Therapists. There's a directory of them. If you're looking for specific help, you can email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Indicate where you're located as well. I did put in the chat. So remember, if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A, please. But I did put it in the chat. There's a Porn Addiction 101 Level 1 starting December 7th. That's a work group. It's not therapy, it's not treatment, but those have been really good foundation pieces. And then there's a Sex Addiction 101 Level 1 starting December 2nd, online, live facilitated. So Scott, who is on with Dr. David, and Jason, who's our program manager at Seeking Integrity Los Angeles treatment program, lead those particular work groups. And I would encourage you to check those out. Those are both on the seekingintegrity.com website. I think you'd find them really helpful. We have level 1, 2 for porn addiction, and level 1, 2, 3 for sex addiction, but we have gotten very good feedback about those particular supplemental support. It would not be enough by itself. We have a drop-in group, and I mentioned that both the Betrayed Partner group and the men's group tomorrow, the drop-in groups are a go, because both of the facilitators are out from outside the US, so they were fine. So those are both there for you. Troy Love has a drop-in group on Friday morning, again for men. So lots of resources, always on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. You'll see the schedule, but I'm with Dr. David. This is one of those where, you getting arrested, and while some people might blow it off like whatever, lots of people won't, and it's traumatizing for them. But you being on the sex offender registry forever, will be problematic for you. So, okay, but there is help. So, okay, my SA husband goes into addict mode occasionally, and it is a real struggle to get him to see how defensive and victim-y he's being. Do you have any hints to help a frustrated spouse help him pull up the nose of the plane before it's too late? He has a full stable of recovery tools and has been in recovery with a CSAT for 15 months, attends 3 SAA meetings weekly, etc.
Okay, so it sounds like he's connected, right? He's doing the work with his CSAT. He's going to meetings. He's doing what he needs to do, and has these occasional victim-y addict mode kinds of things. Some of that is normal. People have ups and downs, but I think sometimes when that addict mode takes on a little bit more life, that's problematic. I think of those moments as kind of warning signs, really, that the attitude is shifting a little bit and it could go south. I love your analogy of pulling up the nose of the plane, because that's exactly what's happening. It's people are kind of, those are downward cycles. When we start to blame, and we start to feel like a victim, and we get irritable, those are all signs that, something's not quite right. And so I think that's an issue. Now, in terms of your role, I think it's helpful probably somehow to point that out. I often recommend to my couples that they do check-ins, regular check-ins, where they can share these kinds of things. It doesn't have to be long and involved. It could be 10 minutes, but the kind of daily communication. I think when things are going well, those are easy to do, and sometimes people kind of don't do them as often. But when things get bad, that's when you really need those things. And if you haven't been doing it regularly, it's that much harder to kind of, hey, can we talk, kind of thing. And so I think it's important as someone who's around your partner to observe it and notice it and point it out. But I think you can't do much more beyond that, because I think you get into the risky, slippery slope situation of kind of being the policeman for his moods or his recovery, being the watchman, kind of being the guardian. And that's not a place you want to be, right? You're not responsible for it. Addict working his program knows that you're not responsible, but I think it is fair for you to be able to voice your opinion and say what you observe. And then it's really up to him to take that to his recovery resources and deal with it. But I think since you're around him all the time, you're really in like an early warning system that, hey, this is something's not right in La La Land here, and we need to fix it. But I think at some point you have to sort of say what you're observing and then put a boundary there and really not try to take it further, because that just provides an opportunity for him to focus on you and all the nagging or whatever people, however they frame it. But I think it's totally legitimate to voice your concern, but then it's his responsibility to then go and take it to his group and say, boy, what's going on with me? This is what the feedback I'm getting. What can I do? So Tammy, what do you think?
I have two practical thoughts for you. One is, when you're not in those situations, when he's not, screaming towards the ground, say, when this happens, is there something that I could say to you that would be helpful? So it's not in the moment, but is it, a code word or, whatever? I mean, but having that be agreed upon as this is what I'm going to say if I start noticing that. And then, then it's you walking away. And like Dr. David said, it's really up to him what he does with that. The other thing I thought of was the story I'm telling myself. The story I'm telling myself when I hear, you talking like this is that you're really struggling. And, is there something, is there something that needs to be done? Whatever. So, but those are less threatening ways. But I agree with you about my husband is really brave, and a couple of times, one time he handed me my running shoes and said, "Do you want to talk about this after you get done with a run?" I wasn't really in the mood to go for a run, but it was the right choice. And he's also said, "I think you need to go to a meeting." Brave guy, and rather than, giving him a whole bunch of pushback, I was like, if he's saying this, now this was, it wasn't early recovery, per se. So if he's saying this, I need a meeting, so I was able to identify, I just shut my mouth and went, yep, and left, but I think having a plan, not in the moment, but I think those check-ins really help too. But hopefully those are useful.
And I just want to reinforce, I love the idea of like a safe word or a code word. We often do that in treatment, where if somebody could use feedback from the group, we'll say, first of all, you're willing to receive it. And then, okay, what's a shorthand? So you don't have to go into a whole long explanation, but you can say, we even had gestures with like pulling your earlobe, or I remember one group, people would make a motion of drinking tea, and it was basically drinking their own, there's a lot of crap in this room right now. So anyway, but it was a laughable way, but it really got the point across. So something like that is an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But have a plan. Don't try to navigate that in the moment. So, okay. I'm a spouse. Discovery was 2 years ago. My SA husband has never been sober for more than 3 months. At the beginning, every time he would relapse, I would shatter. But over time, I felt like I was caring less and less. Recently, I find myself feeling attracted to my coworkers or someone in the grocery store, which is not like me at all. Also, I had a sexual dream with one of my friends with whom I've been friends for 8 years. I don't think of my friend in any way more than a friend. I think this continues. I don't know what this means, and it scares me. I feel like the heartbreak of being with my SA husband is making me go crazy. Please help. Is this normal?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, right, in this position. I think when there's this cycle of relapse, every few months, I think after a while, to protect ourselves, a partner will kind of put a little distance between you and that, and you can't be involved and get crushed every time it happens. And so in a way to do that, you kind of pull back. And I have heard of this occasionally. It's not always the case, but I think when people start to defend their heart and pull back and so put some distance, sometimes there's our minds wander, right? So what am I missing? What could I be getting? And sometimes too, and I wonder, I don't read this necessarily in your question, but I've seen this in other cases where people get a little resentful. People kind of get a little, I'll show you kind of thing. And I don't know if that's going on or not, but there's some kind of get even energy sometimes. But I think also, after 2 years, you may be just hungry for some intimacy and some companionship. And so I think those kind of, I was talking in my little introduction tonight about how grateful I've been for connection, especially during the pandemic. And we all need that connection at different levels, but we certainly need it at an intimate level. And if your husband is basically kind of checked out regularly, and you're, to defend yourself, have also kind of distanced yourself, there's a need for intimacy there. So it makes sense that you would kind of be looking around at people in your life. I don't think it's probably realistic, but these little fantasies of, gee, what about him? What about that person? What about that person? And it's just your mind, that to me, that you're certainly not crazy. What that says to me is that you're hungry for some intimacy. not sure where to put that or where to get it. And I'm sorry for that, because that's a painful place. But I would maybe suggest, I don't know if you guys are in couples counseling, but this might be a good topic to talk about in the context of a facilitated conversation. It's like what's going on, how this is having an effect. But I also, whatever your husband is doing, he needs to change something, right? He may need to intensify his interventions. He may need to step up things, go to more meetings, go to different meetings. I don't know what's going on, but he's definitely in a cycle. And to me, when I see that in clients, there's usually some issue underlying that's not being addressed. And it could be old trauma stuff. It could be, old core beliefs. It could be a number of things, but there's something there. And when that pattern is so repetitive, I would suggest if he's not in therapy, he could really, I can't remember if you said he was in therapy or not, but he could really benefit from some therapeutic intervention, I think, just to kind of probe that and see, okay, what's really going on here? What's the pattern? Because with a therapist, and again, probably not with you, unfortunately, although you know him best, but addicts aren't to do this work, this reflective work. Sometimes they get triggered if their partner's involved. You're trying to tell them these things. The same words can come out of a therapist's mouth and suddenly it gets through. So I think just to have a therapist kind of deconstruct, okay, every 3 months, let's work backwards. What happens? How far back does this go? When does this urge start? What are the feelings? And just kind of deconstruct it all. There's something there. And so I think you're reacting to that, and I'm sorry for that. And I think your reactions are normal, but I think it's your addict husband that needs to do something different and do that work.
And if he is unwilling, which unfortunately I bump up against regularly, then what do you need to do for safety for you? So, what I hear is lonely and not connected to someone who can provide safety for you. You can't trust. It's been 2 years of this, of this cycle. He's in a 3-month cycle. So are you, and so
Right.
and that's very difficult. So I'm really glad you're here. I encourage you to lean into the recovery, or not, well, the support resources for betrayed partners as well. If you don't have a support therapist, not pathologizing you, not calling you, codependent or any of those things, but I think every partner deserves to have professional support. Betrayal trauma, you said I was shattered, like my heart breaks for you. I can feel that. It's one of those where
Right.
you having support, to help you with the trauma and the repeated perpetual trauma. No wonder you're shutting down and not caring. And honestly, we talk about this kind of regularly too, that, when somebody starts being indifferent, there's less hope for the relationship. So if you're starting to disengage, if he doesn't get help, if he doesn't get the right level of help, it will be difficult for the two of you to have a healthy relationship and move forward. Lots of people stay together, but it's a very disjointed. You're over here living your life and you're under the same roof or whatever, but there's no partnership, there's no relationship. So lean into support resources for you. So okay, next question. I'm a sex addict and in recovery since discovery in February. I've been greatly concentrating on empathy and gratitude. I've been trying to stay positive, but the more I realize and feel my partner's pain and the pain I have caused, the more I feel guilty for the feeling grateful and having positive personal moments and experiences. Is it okay to have personal joy and positivity, or should I concentrate more on feeling my partner's pain and hurt?
This is such a great question. And it comes up a lot as the addict kind of wakes up, right? And starts to connect with the feelings and the pain that they've caused. And it's exactly kind of where you're at. They wonder, okay, do I have a right to deserve to be happy or to laugh or to take time for myself or to do things? And I think trying to find that balance is one of the hardest things in early recovery, especially. But the short answer is yes. I mean, of course you have a right to feel good. You have a right to feel joy. And that doesn't negate everything. We can hold two thoughts at once, right? It's like we can be grateful, but we can also recognize that our life isn't perfect. And so I think you can't go through life squelching moments of joy and happiness and connection and deserving to be happy. I mean, I would not defer that. I wouldn't also go around being like carelessly, living your life and playing and having fun while your partner is still working through her issues. But I think it's important to be able to have some moments of pleasure. You know, these are dopamine addictions. Dopamine gives us joy and happiness and wanting more of that. And we are depleted of that in recovery. And if you continue to be depleted of that and kind of live this gray, kind of grim existence, that's a setup for relapse for me, as I see it with my clients over the past. Now, that doesn't mean though that you're negating her pain. That doesn't mean that you don't need to work as a couple to heal that, and there's things you can do to help her with that. I'm thinking of our difference between an apology and an amends. And apology, you know, I define as words. Words are cheap. I mean, how many times do addicts apologize and just do the same thing over and over? Yeah. I mean, it's just people, they do it. I'm an addict in recovery. I'll speak for me. I did it. Thank God I don't do it as much anymore. I probably still do some, but I you know, would say, I'm sorry, and then do the same thing over again and just continue the hurt. So that's an apology. I consider an amends behavior change. Okay, show her that you're doing things differently by behavior. Today, tomorrow, the next day, the next 6 months. That's how trust is reestablished. That's where her healing can happen, is if she sees changes in you, not words. So I think those changes in you can be working your program, you know, doing what you need to do, but it also means having some joy and gratitude in your own life and trying to have some of that shared as well. You know, what can you do as a couple? I really urge couples to make new memories, make new happy memories, do stuff together, rewrite those old, you know, pathways that are full of the pain. Do things that are fun. But I mean, I do see this because a lot of guys, when they do, and there's tremendous remorse when an addict wakes up. It's terrible, and it can go into shame, which isn't very useful either. But remorse, I look at remorse as kind of a fuel, right? It's just to really to be aware of what has been done, but it doesn't mean it's not a jail sentence either. And I think somehow finding a balance where you need to be considerate and connected and empathetic for your partner, but also means being able to take joy in your recovery and the camaraderie and the connection and all that. So I think just finding a balance. Addicts aren't very good at balance, but trying to work your way through that with your partner is probably my best suggestion.
Well, you know, and you express feeling, you know, grateful and positive. So the reality is, you knew you were an addict. You knew you had, you know, you knew all the lies and everything else, and your partner doesn't know until they know. And so, you know, the starting spot for them is when they have discovery. So you get the relief of like, I'm in recovery. I'm learning to do things differently. I can look at myself in the mirror and that, you know, I'm not lying to myself and everybody else. So it's like, you know, but your partner's going, has this all been lies? Is this, you know, and so their whole world is turned upside down. So their healing trails yours, but it's you showing, like Dr. David said, it's you consistently showing that you're, you know, that you're doing the things that you need to do for your recovery. I think one of the things, you know, I'm looking at this and going, like, be grateful that you have you know, that she's still with you, but B, that you have an opportunity to continue the recovery road and show her that you can be trustworthy, you know, and that you can be there for her pain. I love the idea of going and creating new memories. I also think make sure you're giving her space to go do things that are supportive and nurturing for her. With, you know, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and she was, you know, going to a weekend with her girlfriends. Well, great. You know, like what are things that, you know, that she can do that are good for her, joyful for her, you know, as well, you know, maybe hobbies and interests or something like that as well, where she's connecting. Like, it's hard when the partner's world is still focused on, or feels like it has to be focused on, the addict and the addiction, you know, and you know, like we need to for our recovery. But if addiction is sucking the life out of the partners, you know, it's really hard. So how does a partner have things that are healthy and nurturing in their world, and not just have to focus on, on all the negative. But glad you're here. Glad hopefully the two of you are finding the path. It's not just a nicely paved flat path. So I think
I
you're
just want
muted.
to
There you
add
go.
one thing. I think we have to hold two thoughts at once, right? We have to, it's essential that you stay connected to your partner and continue to have empathy and be aware of her pain and do what you can to help it. And there may not be anything you can do except do the right thing in terms of behavior. But it's also, while you're doing that, it doesn't mean that you can't experience that joy. I guess that's my whole point, is just, we can hold two things at once.
Mhm.
I was thinking of when we're in grief about something, if we lose somebody, at some point, we may want to laugh, and it feels weird or guilty to laugh because we should be feeling grief, right? And I think we can feel both. And I think in some level it's healthy. I believe, honestly, it's healthy for you to experience those positive moments. It's going to come back and improve your relationship with your wife because you're in a better place and you can do your recovery better. And so I think stay focused on that. Don't disconnect from her, but certainly work your recovery.
And when she's sharing her pain, try to hold I'm grateful that I can be safe enough that she can voice her pain to me, without gaslighting her, blame shifting or anything else. They focus on, I'm grateful that I'm in a recovery place so that I can hold this space, and that will help you hold the space too.
Right.
Okay, next question. Hello, Dr. Fawcett. I'm sober from chemsex for a year. Yay.
Good for you.
Can prior chemsex experiences be a cause of moderate exhibitionism in front of my spouse, not strangers? In my chemsex experiences, I have gone out of my comfort zone in front of strangers. Does this cause loss of shame, poor and breaking boundaries that need time to heal and recovery? That's an interesting questioning.
Prior chemsex experience. Just trying to make sure I understand what
Yeah.
this is. So I guess kind of what I'm making of this, usually with chemsex and drugs in general, but chemsex in particular, it really is a huge disinhibitor, and people can start to do things, behave in ways that they would never ordinarily do if they weren't under the influence of certain drugs, and including exhibitionism, moderate exhibitionism. Now, I'm not sure you're saying, yeah, it happened in recovery, but I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get the gist of this. In your chemsex experience, you went out of your comfort zone in front of strangers. That's certainly true. And I guess you're doing more of this in front of your spouse now.
So what I'm reading into this is that things that I might have been shyer about doing, prior, but now I'm willing to do in front of
Right.
my spouse, but it's within a consenting relationship. So I have a hard time calling that exhibitionism. I mean, or like, I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was a little my confusion for one thing. Yeah, I think so. I think certainly if we can be comfortable in front of our spouse, that's great, right? We should be very comfortable. I wouldn't necessarily call that exhibitionism. Remember, we spoke in the beginning with another question about exhibitionism really being flashing or exposing yourself to really strangers for the shock value. And that's, so I'm kind of reading what you're saying as just maybe you're more comfortable doing certain things you might not have done before, less inhibited. I don't know. But what my experience normally is in recovery is that in recovery, once people don't have the drugs on board, sometimes they regress a little bit and get kind of more inhibited because the drugs really fueled them or gave them the ability to kind of drop the curtain, and they could do what they wanted to do. And so a lot of times that people feel shame about that in recovery because they think back, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But it happened. So in recovery, sometimes people really struggle to achieve that same level of comfort in their own skin with sexuality and so on. So I think that, and normally what I see in recovery is that people have to kind of work through that again. A lot of people, I think, that have chemsex issues, and probably a lot of people in general, have not had much sexual experience without some kind of drug on board, even alcohol. You know, I think most people probably started out with their sexual experiences having a drink or two, or 12 drinks or two, to get into the mood and to drop their inhibition. So chemsex does that for people, but then in recovery, often there's a little bit of a regression. So I think if you can be comfortable with your spouse and work toward that comfort level, that's the bottom line here. There's no shame there. If you're doing something with your spouse, you can talk about it, you can work it through. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's healthy sexuality, actually, is to be able to explore and be comfortable and share what's on your mind, share fantasies, share things. That's what makes it interesting, by the way. You know, our brains need novelty, and so something new is good. But I'm sorry if I'm missing the boat on this question.
No, I think you're spot on, because it's, you know, does the cause the loss of shame? And I was like, I think that there are sometimes cultural, societal, familial shame things put on, put on us, you know, that we learn that sex is dirty and whatever it is that, you know, that we've learned along the way. So you were less inhibited, clearly, you know, with chemsex, but you're with your spouse. So I think what Dr. David said about communicating, I mean, that's really at the core of all of this is, you know, communicating. Is your spouse okay with this behavior? That's, you know, if it's causing trauma for your spouse, because I've had this too, where spouses are going like, I feel like this, you know, my addict is now, you know, in fantasy, reliving something else. So then that's not a safety for the spouse, you know, or partner. So I think it really is talking to your spouse about, you know, about that. Dr. David often talks about sensate focused, you know, I mean, there's other ways to explore your sexuality too. It, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, just a certain, you know, this is what we do. So, you know, but I think having that conversation, exploring each other, you know, in a healthy and safe way, you know, I think you both could be quite happy with that.
I agree. And by the way, and I just want to underline, a year of sobriety from chemsex is a big deal. So first of all, again, congrats on that. But also what often happens after the kind of intensity of chemsex and the craziness of that is that people have a lot of time connecting with their sexual impulses at all. And so the fact that you're feeling sexual, that you're exploring stuff, and I think sometimes if we've done things under the influence, that maybe cracked the barrier, so that it's an idea that maybe we like something and now we can do it with our partner. I think that puts it in a whole different light. And in that way, if that's what's been going on, then that's great. But the bottom line is whatever you and your partner do that's mutual and consenting, beautiful, you know. And I think it's such a struggle for a lot of guys in chemsex recovery to get back in touch with sexuality, because they're always holding to that kind of crazy, intense, dopamine drenched, you know, craziness that goes, especially with methamphetamine. So normal sex just can't really compare with that. So unless we get into like intimacy and other areas, then it also becomes very interesting, but you're doing it with somebody you care about. And that's the key here. And that's kind of what I see you're doing. So I think what I can see, more power to you.
Yeah, I think if you're communicating and you're vulnerable with your spouse and your spouse is feeling safe, great. So yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? We've got some time left.
Yeah, normally we're
go ahead and type them in the Q&A if you've got anything. So
yeah. You know, let me just mention, Tammy, since you brought it up, sensate focus. There's a exercise by Masters and Johnson, the famous sex therapist couple, now 50 years ago, I guess. But it's this has stood the test of time. It's an intimacy communication exercise for couples. And it starts out, it's basically a touch exercise. And it starts out with a pleasurer and a receiver, and you switch, and it starts out non-sexual, meaning the receiver guides the pleasurer's hand, and you can pinch and rub and tickle and caress and do all kinds of things with different pressures, and you get feedback in real time. That feels good, that doesn't feel good, touch here, you know, don't touch there. And suddenly you have a couple and you're exploring each other's erotic styles in a way. First of all, it's not sexual. The idea is not to have sex, although that sometimes happens. but it's really a rediscovery, and it's a way to connect again. And I'll tell you what I like about it, if I can explain it quickly. With sex addiction and chemsex, it's all fueled by fantasy. Fantasy is the engine that keeps it going. And with those particular addictions, there's this crazy amounts of dopamine that makes the fantasies really wild and intense and unrealistic in some cases. And if we in recovery try to say, okay, I need a fantasy that has the horsepower of that addiction fantasy, we can't, because nothing can. And so the workaround in my view is to not try to match fantasy for fantasy in recovery, but to what other ways do we have to ignite that sexual interest, to get that spark of arousal. And our bodies know how to do it. If we don't rely on fantasy, if we rely on touch, we rely on connection, we will get aroused. I guarantee it. And the sensate focus is a great way to explore this, because you're not trying to like drop into some disconnected fantasy and kind of rev yourself up, but you're really connected with someone. And that's a whole different way of experiencing intimacy. And it's a great way of working around that need for high intensity fantasies to get going, because our bodies know how to do this. They're wired to do this if we just use touch and tenderness and connection. That's the key.
Well, and that's a great prelude to the next question, which is any tips on communication with your spouse when you suffer from porn-induced erectile dysfunction and she is frustrated? And I'm like, like if the focus is about an erection, penile penetration, orgasm, like this is what we're going to do. I do this with my hands and Rob laughs at me, but it's, that's not, if we go back to what is the purpose of sex, and it's vulnerable, healthy communication, pleasure, all of those things, they're like, if we shift the focus, it changes things. So all of those things that Dr. David just talked about with, touching differently, Dr. Rob has talked about, if your porn-induced erectile dysfunction is keeping you from, that particular aspect, pleasure her, watch her play, hold her while she's pleasuring herself. There's lots of other ways to do this, but I think first of all, and make sure you've gone to a medical doctor and make sure there is not something medically going on. I always think that that's a great place to start, and then look at other aspects. But I think all of the things that Dr. David just talked about with the Masters and Johnson Sensate focus, it shifts things, and then you're communicating in a touch way, but on a different level. So what do you think, Dr. David?
I totally agree with that. And it's, I had the answer then the question, I guess, because that's totally relevant. I put Sensate Focus in the chat in case people don't know how it's spelled. So it's there if you want.
Oh, yeah.
It's all over Google, the protocols if you want. But yeah, so Tammy just made some great points, because if we focus, and it's our culture, I think we focus on erections and orgasms and penetration, and everything else is kind of, optional. And I think if we really look at what it's about, what the pleasure is, it's intimacy, it's connection, the power of touch. And I do a lot of work these days with people that are aging and trying to maneuver sexuality and aging, right? And when you're in your 60s, you don't have sex like you were in your 20s. It just doesn't happen. But people are sexual. They're sexual our whole lives. But what becomes more important and valued is touch and intimacy and holding and caressing and all the things we were talking about with Sensate Focus. So I would really try that. I understand your partner's frustration, but I'd really work on that. And I guarantee you, I'm a sex therapist. The more you focus on trying to get an erection and try to make it work, it ain't going to work, because that kind of anxiety just really is the kind of counterforce to an erection. I just want to say a word about with a lot of erectile difficulties, people go to the drugs like Viagra, Cialis, and all those. They don't work. And first of all, in the best of circumstances, they only work 80% of the time, right? 4 out of 5 times they work in normal, healthy people. But the way they work, they work only in the groin, and an erection starts up here. An erection starts in the brain, which is, they always joke about the brain being the biggest sex organ, which is true. But the spark, the erotic spark, has to come up here, and it sends a signal down here. And then those drugs can help things mechanically work once the signal arrives. With porn-induced erectile dysfunction, there's no signal. The signal has been hijacked. And so those drugs aren't going to work because there's nothing to work with. And so what does work, I think, is first of all, patience, staying away from porn. The more we know from medical scans and brain scans that even thinking about porn will set you back as much as looking at porn. When it comes to healing from porn-induced erectile dysfunction, you have to keep your thoughts really pure, and not in a moralistic way, but you can't go there because it'll set you back. And so just some time away, some time in general, I don't know how old you are, but the younger you are, the faster it comes back. And just to really, in the meantime, because you don't want your partner to suffer or not get what she needs. So there's other ways to do that. So I'd really explore optional ways and drop the mindset of, having to have an erection to be okay. It'll come back, but it may take a while. In the meantime, there's all kinds of other alternatives.
So the next one is more of a comment. There is a lot of shame and poor self-esteem associated with not performing well, especially when this is your first relationship when you are sexual.
For sure. I'll give you an example recently of a client who had a particular fetish, I guess you could call it, a certain kind of person in his arousal template, and that became the object in his acting out. And his wife, after discovery, knew about that and assumed that that's what that person was now attracted to and not her. And he fairly soon wanted to prove that he was really attracted to her and set out to do that. And nothing happened. And a lot of shame, just you're talking about a frantic worry, got to prove it to her that she's really who I'm attracted to. The more you focus on got to make it happen, it's not going to happen. And so, just you're right. The amount of shame is tremendous. First of all, sex addiction is all about shame anyway. But when that doesn't work, there's a huge amount of shame and self-esteem for sure. But I think that's where talking about things really helps. Communication with your partner can really help. And also communication with other guys can really help in a support group, because this happens to everybody, and it does. And so just talking about it really does help it make it better.
So the next one is we're going to run out of time. So I'm not sure we're going to get all the questions, but I'm a male sex addict who was referred to a CSAT through Seeking Integrity. I spoke to that CSAT briefly, and he set me up with appointments with someone in his practice. This therapist is not a CSAT and is female. The female would not be an issue, but will this therapist be effective, or how should I proceed? I did 3 sessions already and I'm positive, but I'm unsure. I'm a big fan of working with a qualified therapist. I don't know what the credentials are for the other person. I don't know what the training or supervision is. I don't know if they gave you the online assessments so that they've got more information. The male or female, I just want the most qualified person, so that's never an issue to me. And if you're attracted to your therapist, that's great conversation for your therapy sessions to talk about, because you're going to be triggered by somebody else as well. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dr.
Yeah, I have
David?
the same feeling. I think male, female doesn't really matter. Sometimes one is preferable just given circumstances. And very often a male sex addict could really benefit from a female therapist to like you say, have issues. But a qualified therapist is good. And I don't care about the gender so much. I do have concern about the CSAT, simply because
Me too, really.
I've seen a lot of people who did not go to CSATs, and without that special training, without understanding partner trauma and the effects it has on partners and the dynamics of the addiction and how it can work and look, I've seen a lot of people just get some well-meaning but bad advice. And so it's a very specialized area that I think you may want to look at that. And I'm glad you're it's a good fit maybe, but I do worry that somebody who's not trained, first of all, like Tammy, that there's all kinds of assessments with you through Seek Integrity, all those assessments we do. We share those with CSATs, because CSATs are trained to understand them, not anybody else.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of specialized knowledge that you may be missing out on. And then I do worry, by the way, about disclosure. That's a very specialized protocol that only CSATs do. And I don't know how you're going to manage that with somebody who's not a CSAT. So just food for thought.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about all of that because most therapists do talk therapy, but they're not doing cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what you really need. Do you have a 3-circle plan? What are you doing? Highly encourage you to, if you haven't already, do the work groups. The Sex Addiction 101 level 1 starts next week, Thursday, December 2nd, and then the Porn Addiction 101 starts December 7th. But those are foundational. Psychoeducation doesn't replace a therapist, but I think that would be a really good component for you as well. So consider those on seekingintegrity.com. Okay. Is there a way to measure signs, arousal template recovery from chem sex addiction?
Oh boy, no time to answer that. Let's see. So yeah, we know that the arousal template gets really hijacked by sex addiction, and especially by chem sex addiction, just because the intensity of the dopamine and the fantasies. I think there's no real way to measure it except maybe to notice and be mindful of the times you're attracted back to some of those harmful fantasies that you kind of don't want to go to. I think, and the level of interest you have, or just kind of be observant of, where's your arousal coming from these days, and where's it going, and just there's no quantitative or objective measure that I know of except your comfort level. If you find yourself continually going back or being drawn back to your chemsex fantasies, that's a problem, right? And then we really need to work on that. There is a protocol called fantasy contamination that CSATs can do to kind of, it really is just as walking through, because in fantasy, and it's like we tend to, it's like euphoric recall, right? We remember all the good stuff, but we kind of overlook all the negative stuff that was part of that same behavior. So things like that can help, but I think just time and not activating those old memories is the best course of action.
And the last question is interesting. My ex-SA has a pattern of failed relationships due to acting out for the past 50 years. His brother and sister-in-laws know. The SA presents as a strong Christian with family values. The family does not say anything about his past to the new girlfriends. I have trouble knowing what I know and not saying anything to the new unsuspecting woman he is now bringing around the family events. At what point do the family become part of the facade and contribute to keeping the addiction secret?
Yikes. That's a really complex story, and not an unusual one, I'm afraid. I think families do act as kind of keepers of the secrets, and they kind of gather around and protect the addict sometimes, much to everyone's detriment. So I think that can really be a problem where the family can be complicit in keeping that going. I'm not sure what you can do about it. I'm not sure it's your role to pull these unsuspecting people aside and tell them, but I think it's certainly disturbing behavior, and you might be able to speak to some of the family members if you're comfortable with that, pointing out how you feel about that, and they're protecting. But that's a tricky spot. Yeah, Tammy, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I do, and this is said with all due respect. Not my circus, not my monkeys. He's not your problem anymore. And at some point, like I feel for the new woman. Hopefully, she gets to know him, better. Hopefully, she's for the past 50 years. I hope she's asking questions and things like that. She can reach out to you. If she reaches out to you and asks you, great. Right. But otherwise, at family events, smile, news, weather, and sports, whatever you need to talk about. But yeah, it's really hard. Trust me. I want to fix things. I want to fix things. I want people, and sometimes I have to go, not my circus, not my monkeys, and just go, he's an adult, she's an adult, this if it was a child involved and there was things like that, but it's also really not his brothers and sister-in-law's place to go tell the woman. They could put pressure on him to, right. You need to tell to your ex-SA, you need to tell the girlfriend. He's not going to do that. So unless he's in recovery, then he should be completely transparent. But anyway, right. So I'm sorry, but this is one of those where, here's another one. The Serenity Prayer for me is, what do I have control over? My actions and my reactions, and like no good is going to come of you'll sound like the bitter ex, and you just don't need that. You're above that. you got this. So that's my thought. So yes,
All right.
they sure told me once I found it. Yes, of course. But that's now you already found out. So yeah. So yeah, they protected, but you know, and I'm sorry for you. Hopefully you're doing well. You're in a good place. You've learned lots. You've got gratitude for where you are now. So anyway, okay. Well, thank you, Dr. David. So next week,
Thanks,
Dr.
Tammy.
David is going to be gone. And so Scott and I are going to be here. So please join us, and happy Thanksgiving to those of you in the US. But do join the Betrayed Partner group and the men's group tomorrow if you are around. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, Tammy. Bye-bye.
Thanks, you too.